Good afternoon, madam. Yes, hi, my name is John Smith, and I'm calling from Go Away. That's mostly how we feel when we hear those horrific words that we know are going to lead us to a completely cold call. Well, today we're going to change, I think, how we think about phones, how we think about telemarketing, how we think about the ability to market and recruit brand new customers using the humble old telephone. Welcome to the TEPFU Lazy Marketing Academy 1 hour marketing discussion. Today, officially joining me on the panel, I'm delighted to have, first of all, Rachel Knott. Rachel, are you there?
Hello. Hi, Al. Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello. Simon Hutchings, are you there?
I am. Hi everyone.
Hello. Adam Cockrell, are you there?
Yes, I am. How's it going?
Fantastic. We have a full house, and Rachel is really glad to have you back. Last month, it was a very male-dominated panel on International Women's Day. Today, not only we've got Rachel repping the gender, but we've also got the fantastic Wendy Harris. Hello, Wendy.
Hello, Al. Hello, everybody.
Welcome officially. We've been chatting in the green room for the last 20 minutes, and I've written down an absolute ton of stuff I want to talk about. At the top of this podcast, I opened it by reminiscing about those early signs in a phone call that tend to trigger us or signal to us that some amazing opportunity is about to be presented to us. We've all been there. We know what it's like. Today, we're talking about when is, ultimately, the overall topic is when is the right time to do marketing? Because last month, because it was International Women's Day, I hadn't anticipated that actually the female speakers that were on the panel weren't going to be there through no errors on anyone's part. Obviously, there were bereavements, there were lots of things involved. We ended up with an all-male panel, and I came away thinking, well, surely today is International Women's Day, but every day, of course, should be a day where women are respected. We shouldn't need, sadly, we do, an IWD. And it made me think then about marketing, and of course, because that's what I think about an awful lot. And one of the things about marketing that I get asked is, should I do it now? Should I wait? What should I do? So I wanted to assemble a panel of people, first of all, who are going to talk about that topic, and we're also going to blend in lots of interesting stuff that we've just been talking about. I've got 5 things to raise, and we've only got an hour, and I'll speak for 58 of them, I'm sure. So let's kick off. You said something really interesting earlier on in the green room, Wendy. You used the words rainbow bridge. Now, when it comes to marketing, one of the reasons that we slow down and stop doing our marketing is we have fear. We have fear of doing stuff. We have fear of being visible. We have fear of this and fear of that. And one of the biggest things that people do not do is follow up. And one of the biggest reasons they don't follow up is they hate picking this up. And the reason they hate picking this up is because they're afraid something's going to happen. So tell us about the Rainbow Bridge. I can't even say it. Tell us about the Rainbow Bridge, Wendy, and how that unifies 2 spheres as you see it. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Al. The Rainbow Bridge for me is how I explain my specialism in what I help with, which is the telemarketing, the cold calls, the cold outreach of getting in touch with new customers. And really, there's a lot of misconception about what telemarketing is. And it's really telephone marketing. It's just been abbreviated and stuck together. And really, it should be as much about finding out if that person that you want to work with is the right person for you to work with or not. So to me, it's that sort of element of the sales process is if they're not, oh, good, because we don't have to be worried about that anymore. We've moved on. We'll move on to the people that are. And of course, it's taking your marketing over the Rainbow Bridge because you're having a conversation in real life over the telephone that's not just copy or websites or digital marketing. It's a real human conversation, not this whatever it is that's hitting all of our ears at the moment. And building that relationship over the bridge towards the sales side of things. And of course, sometimes it's hard to know where it starts and where it finishes, which is why I call it the rainbow, because you're never quite sure what color you're going to be in, or, you know, all these assumptions that we have. So just assume that it could be anything all the time.
Amazing. And I think what's interesting to me there is most people write various channels in marketing off because of assumptions. If you know, telemarketing is not a popular channel currently. It used to be very popular. It's not a popular channel with a lot of people because they still have memories of telemarketing, but telemarketing's moved on an awful lot. Data protection, privacy, there are loads of, it's so much more regulated in a sense now than it ever was. And also, human beings are not as easily spoken to as they were 20, 30 years ago. So the expectation of the person receiving the call is going to have gone up, which is going to change your approach. And that's why the business that you run isn't called the Wendy Harris Telemarketing Company. It is, on the other hand, called
Making Conversations Count.
Right. And this is what I wanted to talk about, because there is nothing like the phone. Adam, Simon, Rachel, prove me wrong. There is nothing like the phone for qualifying somebody in or out. Is there a better mechanism than hearing their voice say yes or no?
No.
I don't
No.
think there's much of a substitute for an in-person type of communication.
Other than video. Yeah, other than video.
Yeah, so apart from telephone, video, or face-to-face, that's the only, right. And yet I know that if I did a poll, including all of us and me, if I did a poll of 100 marketing people I know, I bet you 99 out of those 100 don't like calling and getting answers from people most of the time. Certainly early on in their careers, I was mortified. I didn't want to take the risk. What if it was a no? You know, it's horrific. But Rachel, how have you found it? I mean, are you voracious on the phone? Are you?
I'm all right with calling people. I used to work years ago. I did have a job as a telemarketer, and it was a very different. This is when I was acting. I needed a bit of money on the side, and it was a very different mindset. It was all about the sales, and I'll be honest, I really hated it, because to me, I liked having conversations with people, and if they didn't want to buy the product, I didn't want to sell them the product.
That was okay.
Yeah, that wasn't the mindset that we were encouraged to have. We were encouraged to sell at all costs. And I think that's where what you're kind of moving against. But I think something else interesting that's been mentioned is this fear of the word no. And for a long time, I was quite fearful of, oh, you know, what if they say no? What if they don't like my service? What if they don't want my services? What if they say it's too expensive? Or what if they say I'm not good enough? Or and actually, you know, sales pipelines are no good if they're just stagnant. If they're just sat there doing absolutely nothing, oh, I've got loads in my pipeline. Well, what good is it there? And the thing is, all you're doing is wasting time on people that don't want to buy your services. So actually getting that no, great. Let's move on. Let's get to the next person. Let's find the person that does want to buy my services, that does want to work with me. And so we shouldn't be afraid of the no. And also, I guess what you're talking about, Wendy, with conversations is understanding why people might not buy as well, might be a really important factor, because it might be something that you need to address. And you're not going to find that out by sending out, you know, an e-marketing campaign and that they never respond to. You're not going to find that out unless you have that conversation with them. So, yeah, I do think that conversation basically is at the heart of keeping that sales pipeline moving and eventually getting the sales.
I think you make two good points there that I can pick up on, actually, Rachel. And one is, I use a 4R formula. And the reason that they might not be looking to buy could just be timing. So, you know, for me, my 4R formula is, am I speaking to the right person for the right reason at the right time? Because then the results that we're all after look after themselves. And really that leads on rather nicely to, you know, if you've got a pipeline, the fear of doing something is usually about scale and also timing. Can we cope with it? So it's understanding our numbers. How many do we need? How many customers can we actually manage before we have to scale our own business and cause additional change within the business, or are we just then accepting that the numbers that we want are the numbers that we can manage, which means that we don't need to do too much?
That's fascinating. You know, the things that just flew into my head, I wish you could all just cut this bit off and you could all see it. What flew into my head there was this completely links with so much of what I think and talk about with so many people, that one of the biggest problems in marketing and in business in general isn't that we don't know how to do it. It's that we often we don't want to do it for whatever reason. It's not that we can't do it. It's not that we won't do it. And it's not that we shouldn't do it. We can, we could, we should, we just don't. Things like exactly what you've just spoken about. In any way shrinking the pipeline and taking away the delusion that everything's going to be okay because we've got a really huge pipeline. Because as long as we don't ask anybody, it's a huge pipeline. If we ask everybody, it might only be reduced down to 3 prospects. And the fear, the lack of safety net, that illusion of a safety net that comes from a healthy pipeline. And then onto what Rachel said, if the pipeline isn't moving, basically it's dying, to paraphrase. You're absolutely spot on. I've never thought of it that way. Your pipeline's a river. And if you stop it moving, it's just going to get that nasty, ganky water. You know, when you see a swimming pool after a year, and no one wants to go near it. Adam, Simon, no. How do you, I know you both well, and I know you could answer this at different stages in your career. 2 or 3 years ago, how did you feel about, you know, risking shrinking the pipeline to make it more realistic?
I'm not sure 2 or 3 years ago I had much of a pipeline, to be honest. So I mean, it was kind of, you know, the business was smaller. And I think what you said earlier, Wendy, about kind of like, can we cope, is a massive thing at that point. And you're kind of a little bit apprehensive about, well, if I make the call and I get, or if I make 2 calls and I get both lots of business, how am I going to manage this? So I think, you know, like you say, understanding your numbers is massive. I think more recently, it becomes easier because I think the emphasis is so firstly, I think I've understood myself better over the last few years through like business coach work and just really understanding where my strengths are with regards to selling, if we want to say that. I'm more aware now that I am totally the anti-sales. So that means I would rather just have a conversation with someone and try to offer value and understand the 4 R's, or understand the first 3 of them. And then if there's a result off the back of it, then that's even better. You know, I had a strategy call with someone earlier, and the first thing I said, well, you've booked this. I know you're already in the process of having a rebrand. So it makes no sense to me to start pitching to you. That's not the intent that I want. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm just here to offer as much value as possible. Come the end of that call, how can we potentially work together at the end of this, Simon? So, you know, just by being more confident and more relaxed in your approach, from my perspective, has definitely helped me to try and get a more positive result, I think. Adam?
Yeah, 3 years ago, I was doing anything I could to close every single lead that I had in my pipeline. And I didn't really have a qualification process. I was just thinking about, I need to, you know, hit my targets. And I was bending over backwards to close absolutely any deal, whatever it might be, even if it was something I wasn't particularly experienced in, or, you know, I would just see everything as, I've got to win this opportunity, and that's how I'll be successful. That was turned out to be a very exhausting strategy, very stressful, you know, impacted the quality that I was able to deliver. And so been on a bit of a journey, and, you know, a lot of support from these guys, particularly with Al. I'm now very focused on qualifying the pipeline, and I'd much rather have, you know, 10 strong leads in the pipeline than, you know, 30 kind of iffy ones that I haven't really qualified. I'd be happy to reduce that pipeline down to, you know, just 3 good quality leads and put my time and attention into those. I've overcome now that fear of, you know, losing a potential lead I'm more concerned about saying, you know, is this right for me, and is this right for you? Is this a good fit? Are we going to be of value to each other? Because we're going to go on a journey together. We're going to build a relationship, and the success of the project ultimately depends on all of that aligning. So let's have that conversation first, and go from there. So I think you know, what you were saying before, Wendy, about qualification, and I'd love to hear more about that. But you know, effectively, that, you know, the phone call being a conversation, I really see now this all about relationships, you know, and personal relationship theory and practice is very relevant to business relationships. And that's what we're doing from the get-go, is we're building a relationship with somebody. And if my relationship with a prospect, you know, if I'm not heeding the warning signs, seeing the red flags, then we're going to have a bad relationship. You know, I'm entering into a relationship that's going to have issues. And that ultimately will bite me in the butt, because that will lead to a project that's not going to be successful.
Yeah, before you dive in, Wendy, I just want to say, Adam, I think, you know, the perspective around reducing it even more is brilliant. The reality is, until we get confident enough in doing business, certainly in the early days. So if anyone's watching this and they're new into business, the tendency to say yes is huge, because we don't have enough data yet to compute that we might be any good. And so we say yes to everything because we don't know that we're good at anything yet. We might have been doing it for 20 years. We might be good at it, but it doesn't mean we believe we're good at it. And then we get this comfortable place where, okay, we're making some revenue, we're turning over some business, and we can start to be pickier. And it's that journey to picky, you know, it's that journey to being able to say, you know, and Adam talked about red flags, we talked about red flags loads, and it's that journey to having red flags. It's that journey, in tech food we call it flip FOMO. I want to flip the fear of missing out from me missing out on the revenue to you working. I want you to fear missing out on working with me. Does that make sense, Rachel? I said you were going to come in. I wasn't sure. Maybe it was. Yeah.
I was gonna. Well, I love that flip FOMO idea. First of all, and it takes a lot to start turning away clients. And I recently had the first kind of one or two that I thought, you know, there was nothing wrong with them, that, you know, they were perfectly nice people, but I was like, I'm just not the right fit for them, and that's okay, you know. And I found that out through conversation. But I was thinking, you know, when we first started talking, Wendy, I was thinking, oh, I don't really do any telesales, you know, I don't do any telephone marketing. But I guess I do, because my first action when people get in contact with me, the next step in my process is I get them on a call and I talk to them. So at what point would you say is the right time to pick up that phone and have that conversation? Should it be someone that you've spoken to, that you've had communication with before, or is it completely cold, and can you go in it from that cold calling perspective?
Yes, to both, I would say, because it's like lots of things and lots of answers in marketing and sales, isn't it? It depends, Rachel. You know, it depends on the circumstances. But, you know, it's kind of why in my book I write about using LinkedIn as a way to warm up connections, because if you've got a shop window, which is your profile and your posts that is talking about what is important to you and in your business, if they accept that connection request, then it's highly likely that they've got a good idea why you've reached out to them in the first place. So it's kind of like a little bit forewarned, forearmed. And a great way to follow that up is to say thank you. Just give them a call and say thank you for that. Whether that leads to anything more will depend. And this is why people don't like picking up the phone, planned or otherwise. That's planned, as in your motivation is to say thank you, but they still don't know that to expect the call. So essentially, you've got a very strong reason for the call, as opposed to a cold call where you've fabricated the reason. You've thought in your head, from all the evidence that you can see, that it's going to be a good fit. This is the reason that I'm calling. So it all goes down to sort of weight. And I think what stops people from picking up the phone is their experience of answering the phone and those bad experiences that they get. And I'll pick up on something that Al said earlier and it was about the reality. And that's all we have is the reality, what we've got to base it on. And a lot of what is in scripts that companies use is tapping into your dreams rather than the reality, because we all want something more tangible. We're a lot savvier now, aren't we, in the tactics that everybody uses to get you across the line and be my customer, buy my stuff. So it's taking it away from that promise of something to the proof of something. And it's looking to get that conversation going so you can get to the reality and the proof as quickly as you can.
I was just waiting to see if anyone else wanted to dive in. I think everything about this is spot on, and it answers a question that most people are afraid to even deal with, and that is around that avoidance, and the avoidance of no's, but also the avoidance of screwing up, the avoidance of saying the wrong things, the avoidance of offending someone. I think I remember somebody once about 5 years ago in passing referred to me as a salesman. I mean, I went apoplectic. You know, I've been in marketing for 20 years. How dare you? You know, I was so offended, because no one wants to be, nothing wrong with salespeople. Just to be clear, before all the salespeople in the world unite and come at me, there's nothing wrong with salespeople. But what there was I didn't want to be perceived as being salesy. And I think that's part of the challenge. You know, what do we say? We were speaking in the green room, and I think you had a rule, Wendy, or somebody, well, I think it was you, Wendy, that had a rule around how to tell if it's real or not. And I've got a rule as well, of course. What was the name of your rule? Can you remember? I'm sure you can. If you can't, I'll remind you. It was something to do with saying it. Was it the say it out loud rule or something about that? Or was that Rachel?
I think Rachel.
Someone said the saying out loud rule.
Yeah.
I was talking about
Conversational copy.
Yes, I was talking about conversational copy. So
right, yes.
if you were writing a script, you know, it's what looks good on paper, you know, read it out loud. And I had this attitude towards all copywriting, because all copywriting should be an extension of conversation on screen or on paper. So yeah, the read it aloud rule is sort of, you know, it checks to see how human you sound. And if you sound like a corporate robot, you probably need to make your writing a little bit more conversational. But that's when you're using a script in particular.
Is it possible that it's that scripting thing that's given I'm going to use it now, cold calling, a really bad name? Because it's kind of like, if you get the call from an unknown number, we have a instant thought that someone's going to try and sell me something. And if they go through the same process as we're expecting with regards to, almost like you ask them a question, you're going to hear click, 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 as they're trying to find the right answer, because these companies are using people that don't really know their business. Obviously, you know, us as business owners, if we're making the call or we've got someone that's worked with us for a number of years, they're going to have that in-depth knowledge of how we do business, who we work with, the value that we can offer, the gains that they can get from us. And then it becomes a little bit more of a natural conversation, because we're able to respond more humanly on the fly, rather than, oh, what response should I use for this question?
Yeah, next time you get one of those calls, Simon, give them my number and my website, won't you? Because we can fix that really easily. And it's not necessarily because they don't know the business. It's just how they've been taught to present it.
Yeah.
And the challenge with calling out of the blue a number that you don't know, the first one is always leave a message, because otherwise you're definitely reinforcing the fact that they haven't picked up the phone. I'm not going to tell them who I am, because when they answer, I'm going to tell them. So I'm, you know, so equally you're like, oh God, and they've tried 3 times now. They definitely want to sell me something. And if they've not answered after that, they've probably blocked your number. So do yourself a favor. If you are going to be calling out, leave a message. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's just it's important I speak to you. And that's it.
I have a question, Wendy. I think my fear of around phoning people isn't around the getting the no, like we were talking about before, because like I said, I've kind of moved past that now. I actually have a fear, and I don't know whether this is linked to I'm slightly traumatized from my days as a telemarketer, following those awful scripts. It's the fear of irritating people, that people might not want to have a call from me, and if they do pick up, they might be irritated that I'm interrupting their day. So I've always had this thing where I feel like I need to schedule a call. Is it okay to call you at XYZ? You know, so how would you suggest overcoming that fear and that sort of apprehension around actually picking up the phone and talking to somebody?
It's a really good question, actually, Rachel, and it's something that I cover very quickly in introduction calls, and that is that we've got 7 seconds. The data tells us, the science behind it, you know, is incredible. You've got 7 seconds. The mistake most people make is that they say, oh, hello, I'm Wendy from Making Conversations Count. I help people pick up the phone to strangers, and I'd like to talk to you about being able to do. Already you've just tuned out. You're not interested, because it's all about me. You're the caller. So very, very quickly, you've got to do very similarly in your marketing, is talk about them. Hello, I'm Wendy from Making Conversations Count. I'd really like to introduce myself, but I'd want to just understand how you reach your new customers now.
It's amazing, isn't it? The power of just putting the customer first. It's so hard to do, and it's one of the biggest challenges I face when I'm coaching people. It's so hard to put yourself in their perspective, and that's a great example. Rachel, does that address the question? Yeah,
and it's quite it's quite funny, because that's exactly what I would talk about when copywriting. That's, you know, so I say don't talk about yourself. Immediately start with them.
But you all do that. When Simon talks about design, if it's my website, it doesn't care what my favorite color is. You know, if Adam's building me a website, he's not interested in what I want as the owner. He's interested in what my customers want. You know, I think what's unique about all of us, and I think that's why we're all here on this podcast, is we're all quite similarly minded in that respect. And copy, essentially, that's the thing that most impressed me about you, Rachel. Not that you're there to be impressed by me, but as somebody who's been in marketing and knows, I don't know how many copywriters I know, your ability to just get people to talking about their clients is superb. That's why the copy that comes out is brilliant.
I would hazard a guess that there's a big difference between our current approach without Wendy's help, our approach with Wendy's help, and you know, that versus, and sort of how we would do it as you know, business owners looking to connect with people, versus bigger companies that have outsourced telemarketing with scripts, and it's a lot less personal, isn't it? You know, so I think part of my blockage would be education. You know, I like a set of rules. I kind of like to know, you know, this is my structure, this is how I do things. And I think, yeah, my procrastination around calling somebody if I saw their website, their SSL certificate wasn't working, for example, and I know that that's creating a lack of trust with their potential clients, and they're possibly leaving money on the table, and I could help them with that. And it would be a very simple thing. I could call them up, let them know that I'm available to help them if they want some help. But yeah, not knowing like how to start that conversation, and I think part of my fear, less around maybe irritating them, although I wouldn't want, you know, I'd be slightly concerned about that, but it'd be more about probably fear of my own emotions. You know, I think if I was to spend the afternoon making a bunch of cold calls, and let's assume that, you know, I don't have a particularly good approach, and it would just, you know, it's a whole afternoon of no's and people hanging up on me and so on, I think I'd feel quite tired or exhausted by, you know, all of the, you know, repetitive kind of rejection and so on. And so that story in my mind about how I'm going to feel negatively, puts me off even doing it in the first place. But I think if I felt confident about my approach, that I was adding value straight away, and that I was, able to kind of phrase that in a way that would get a conversation started, I would feel much more confident about it, and much more confident in the fact that I'm actually bringing some value. And I know from my own experience that a lot of telesales calls I receive, I'll shut down very quickly, particularly if I've picked up on the fact that it's, it's an outsourced script-based kind of thing going on. But there are times where somebody will start a conversation with me, they'll ask the right questions, they'll get me talking, and I find myself just sort of smiling, going, they've kind of got me here. I'm open to actually having more of a conversation about this. Maybe this is worth exploring. And so that's obviously a bit of an art, and I can see how, what you're doing and helping people could be really, really valuable.
It's about caring, isn't it? And showing that you care. So Adam, when you next ring somebody up because of their SSL certificate, instead of ringing up and saying, hey, I noticed that your SSL certificate feature is not working, you go, hey, I'm Adam, and do you know what, I could really help you with something that would, mean that more people would stay on your website, benefit, and you care. You care that it's happening to them enough to reach out and say, even if it's not me that you use.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think,
yeah, definitely,
the care word is massive. I'm absolutely certain, knowing Rachel and Simon and Adam well enough, I can categorically state that every single one of us four, and I'm sure you, Wendy, and Rachel already gave us the example earlier, I would rather somebody went with someone that was right for them, than they went with me for the money, 1,000,000 times over, because I've made that decision in the past, and it always comes back and bites you. There's nothing to be gained. The minute you stop caring for the client, the minute you are compromising something of yourself, and it will, one way or another, come back to you, probably multiple times. So that ability to not worry about it, to just trust that you'll get the business that you deserve, that you're due, that your marketing warrants, is really powerful. It's very liberating, because then you stop worrying. And I think, Adam, you said it, you don't have that same pressure, because it's important that they get the right result, not me. The universe didn't put me at the center of it. Galileo didn't discover the universe revolving around me. Sadly, that would have been lovely. Wendy?
I would also say that if you're not going to approach those calls and do them anyway, you're drawing down on your energy, because it's constantly going to be in the back of your mind telling you haven't done it.
Yeah.
So even if you do it and you're tired, at least the action of that doing gives you that energy. And it's like anything, we have to practice. We have to practice, what we're going to say. And like Rachel said, say it out loud. If you can record your call on speaker or something like that, then that's a really good indication back to yourself. Nobody likes hearing themselves. It's weird, I know. But it's a really good thing to do. So what's the best option? To have a black cloud of energy that you're carrying around with you, or sunshine with a rainbow bridge?
The weight of what we should be doing, or what we think we should be doing, is quite heavy, really, isn't it? We carry that stuff around, and there's a lot of it, I think.
So it's a disservice to us, which will impact on the customers that we care so much about too.
And you're also taking away an opportunity for that customer to have a wonderful experience with working with you by avoiding calling them in the first place. Exactly.
So here's an interesting thought. My sales coach, the only person that I've ever actually received any official sales training from, a chap called Matt Elwell, would always say, if you believe you can help that person, then it's your duty to close them, because otherwise you leave them open. However, I would caveat that by saying, and I'm sure he'd agree, If it's a no, it's a no. That's up to them. It's their life, it's their money. You can't make somebody do something they don't want to do. It's fundamentally impossible to make somebody do something they don't want to do. Now it's your job to market yourself as effectively and as clearly and as optimally as possible. And when you're speaking to that person, it's absolutely your duty to try as hard as possible. If you believe it's a fit, if you see their problem and think, well, look, I know I can help you. You can't see it. I'm going to throw everything at you to get you over the line because I genuinely believe it's the right thing for you. If you're doing it from the right motivation, fantastic. If you're doing it to fleece people, whether they need you or not, go to hell. You're the scum of the earth and we all hate you. You know, bottom line, awful people. Don't do that. That sucks. That's awful. It's not cool. It's not ethical. It's frankly dishonest. You know, it's the wrong way to go about it. But if you truly believe, you know, if there's a brand launching and they need a phenomenal design and brand bank to compete with their market, and if they need a phenomenal web presence, and if they need amazing copy that's going to be SEO driven and everything else, I would absolutely push these three amazing people to close that client, because I know, looking at it, well, it's a no-brainer. Now, I can't make the decision for the client because only the client knows all the information. They know I can think it will be a good fit, but it's their judgment at the end. And if it's a no, it's a no. But it's very liberating when you have that clarity before you start a project, isn't it? And Adam, I know you probably have the most complex projects out of all of us because they're web projects. No offense, Simon and Rachel and even me, we deal with complexity, but the complexity of huge websites and all the digital marketing pieces around them and bringing design and copy and strategy, you know, it tends to be immense. Adam, you know, when you get it wrong, it resonates, it reverberates through time over months and months, doesn't it? So when you get it right, it must feel, just like a weight's off your shoulder.
Sorry, how do you mean by getting it wrong, Al?
Well, if you don't do the briefing,
I'm just kidding.
Oh right, I see. Sorry.
Fished in.
Well done. You can have that one. Go on, carry on.
No, absolutely. I think you're right. I mean, it's with a project with a long cycle, you know, I think a lot of clients are surprised by the sort of timeframes I'll often give for a project. And for a lead generation website, I'll generally say approximately 6 months. You know, and in the client's mind, they don't understand that level of complexity and what we're putting into it. And it may well be that they've had maybe a cheaper website project done in you know, at the start of their business, and it was done in a few weeks. And but then when you move into a realm of, you know, we're going to be going through a branding process, and that could take 8 weeks. You know, we're going to go through copywriting, that could take 8 weeks, you know, or longer, depending on how much content there is before we've even got to design, you know. And then you've got the design process and you've got the development and I'm very, very detail oriented, as I was saying, and making sure that all of those complexities are accounted for up front. And if we can get all of that lined up, then we can have a really successful project. But yeah, if you misjudge the time frames and the things that need to be done, then that's going to be a headache for me and for the client. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think sorry, Al.
Go on, Simon.
I was just saying, I mean, just tap into what Rachel was saying earlier between effectively cold calling and scheduling a call. I think for me, this is where kind of scheduling comes in handy to some degree, because you can start to apply or start to provide them with some information that will allow them to make a decision or part of a decision on whether you might be a good fit for them before you've even had the conversation. And obviously, if you can lead in with benefit and value, like you said, Wendy, and instantly turn it on them, or how are we helping you with your challenges and problems? I think it works. And I think, you know, being able to kind of pre-position yourself as an expert, or pre-positioning your process, which then may imply that it could take longer than they may have firstly expected, it can mean that call is very much more focused, or they've already got in the back of their mind that this seems like it might take longer than we think, or we can raise that question and see what the response is. And then it comes down to being, like I say, fit for both of us at that point.
I think you make a good point, Simon, because I've actually changed my scheduler in as much as that, you know, anybody can get into my diary. It's on my LinkedIn profile, but I've changed that now to an exploration, and there are questions that I ask. And let me tell you, my one-to-ones that come out of the blue have dramatically dropped. And I'm actually really happy with that, because I'm not spending sometimes 2-3 hours a day on a call where I will help people for free. Because it's my nature. If they're asking me questions, then I'll just say, go and do this, you know. So now I'm pre-qualifying before that call. And it's the same step on the reverse as well, which is what you want, is, you know, to qualify with a telephone call. Is this right for you? Because if it's not everybody is, and not everybody's a good fit, people to people. And there was something else that came to mind as well. It'll come back to me because it wasn't a lie.
Can I jump in whilst you're percolating that? I'm sure it'll come back to you.
It has.
Oh, well, go ahead.
No. Well, and part of what I always find fascinating, equally fascinating and frustrating, is how marketing has moved so far away from conversation, even though Rachel agrees with me. We all agree that copy needs to be conversational, but it's become so digitally driven that my frustration, and I do find it fascinating because for the people that I speak to, love to speak to people. Where's the human in the process? You know, so if you're sending out email marketing, are they following it up with a real person? Because that's a genuine interest if somebody's used a call to action. I find it frustrating that people spend all of this on making sure that they present themselves and drive customers to their website or their LinkedIn profile and one thing or another, and they wait for it to happen.
They've automated it. It's a process now. It's really easy, Wendy.
Yeah, but nothing happens. Not
No,
everybody will do something with it.
No, I agree. And in fact, Adam, without going into details, we've got lots of discussions ongoing with lots of different people, and we had a discussion exactly about that. About everything was perfect apart from the fact that the human had been taken out of the process. I'm experiencing that at the moment, where, you know, people want information from me, people I spend money with, people I invest in to grow me. And I'm being cautious because I don't want them to hear this on the podcast. But, you know, there's no humanity involved in their process. It's all just, right, can you fill this form in? Can you fill that form in? That was a 2-minute phone call, and it would have come so much better from a human being. But you sent me a Google form. Thank you so much. It's a bit like when hi, thank you for calling Big Bank. Your call is really important to us. Well, it isn't, obviously, because otherwise it wouldn't be a bloody answer machine. You know, and there's a lot of fakery. And isn't the best way to show somebody you care to give them a tiny slither of your time rather than a recorded message or just another email? People fire out emails. If you could do business just on the power of firing emails, we'd all be retired. But business is not done, in my experience, on email. Business is done, in fact, not even on any automated or electronic device. Most of the time, if you're spending more than 100 quid, I would say, there's going to be some human interaction involved. There has to be.
No, I think people want to buy from you when they meet you. You know,
Yeah.
So when they meet Al and they talk to Al, that's who they want to work with. So,
absolutely.
You know, our funnels, our marketing tools that get them into the conversation are all, you know, important, and they help us qualify out time wasters and so on. but then it's that human interaction, obviously, that's going to kind of seal the deal. And we were talking about, like, what I was going to say a minute ago was just around the qualification process. You know, something I've learned is that there are, it's a generalization, but I believe there are web designers who will take on board a client's requirements and then run with that. So they might say, the client might say, I need a website and I need this and I need that. So the web design agency would say, okay, that's the scope of work, that's what we're going to do. What I now tend to do is say, okay, cool. Why do you think that you need that? And how is that going to allow you to reach your goals? Let's take a step back. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Now, is that really the best way to achieve them? Is it the most cost-effective way? Is it actually even going to achieve them at all? And a lot of the time I might say to them, I don't think you need a website right now. I think you need a marketing strategy. And I think you need a brand. And then we can talk about your website, you know? And that I'll turn people away. I'll say, yeah, this isn't the right stage to be looking at the website. But in doing that and overcoming my own fear of, you know, losing a potential client, it tends to have a much stronger impact in terms of building a relationship with that person and building trust with them, because it shows I genuinely care about the outcome, so much so that I'm quite willing to, you know, sit back and wait for the right time should they wish to come back to me. And we were saying in the green room just before about it's almost like a therapy session working with us. I think it shouldn't be undervalued how important, how strong an impact it can have of just giving some consultation time, or even, you know, a 15-minute, 30-minute, you know, hour-long kind of free, you know, session just to start building rapport. Just doing the simple human interaction things such as hearing somebody, you know, what is the pain that you're going through with this, you know, and listening to them and taking that on board and empathizing with them. You don't even necessarily need to give them, you know, any particular kind of direction, but even just doing that can be a lot more than they're receiving elsewhere, and is hugely valuable. And I'm sure we can't get that across, you know, in an email or a form.
You can't really turn around to somebody in an email, can you, and say, well, I really want to understand what your priorities are. And I hate when I hear people saying stuff like, oh, what are your top challenges in business right now? Oh, move over. I've only just met you. I'm not going to tell you my top challenges. Right. But if you can boil down your qualification questions so that it is about their priorities in relation to what you do, you will uncover the opportunities. Like you said, Adam, you know, it might not be the right time for you. I often fall in 2 or 3 steps too soon. And it's about how you manage that so that they come back when they're ready and you help them get to that being ready.
Yeah.
I can tell you, go on, Tom.
I was just thinking about the sort of the process as well. And we're talking about humanizing our marketing as much as possible, and just making sure there's no discord between how we're marketing ourselves to humans versus how we're actually speaking to them as well. You know, Rachel will often help us with tone of voice and making sure the written tone reflects the business perfectly. But then if someone is picking up on bits of marketing through social and they're getting an idea for your business, and then an idea of what your business is and how you can potentially offer value, and then a call with someone doesn't quite sit with the same tone as what you've been speaking about, obviously that's going to cause some issues, because they're going to think, well, I'm almost bought in at this point. I've seen lots of marketing which talks about exactly what we need to speak about, and I get it, but now you're coming in to a conversation, and it might be down to the fact that, again, then they're not talking directly with us as a business owner. They may be talking to someone else that doesn't quite get it or doesn't appreciate some other part of the marketing journey that they've gone through. But being able to match that tone into the conversations, the actual conversations that you're having, is got to be super important as well.
this is a phrase that I use a lot, which is alignment in your approach builds culture.
Makes sense to me.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, and also, you know, again, go back to kindness and care. You'll know if you're doing the right thing, and you'll know if you've got the right outcome if you put the client first. When you come at it from the other perspective, it's almost impossible for it to go right. And the one other thing I'll just add before letting someone else speak is getting people into the conversation. And I've almost said this 3 or 4 times today, because you've all said we work really hard to get people into the conversation, and we do. And then we have that lovely call with them where we're honest and we're open and we're sharing and we're giving them value, and we're testing a close, but they're not ready, so it's fine. When will you be ready? What's left? You know, what do you need to do first before you can make a decision? We're everything they want us to be. And I can't tell you how many times I put the phone down and thought, oh, brilliant, I'd love to work with them. And I send them an email saying, look, that was a really great call, I'd love to work with you. We diarised for 3 months because you think everything will be out of the way and you'll be in a position to talk to them. And then I've done that and I've left it. And in 3 months, I've come back to them to hear the horrific magic, or not magic, horrific words of nightmare. Oh, sorry, we went with someone else in the meantime. Because I just, in the early days of my business, I thought, well, we've got a call planned in. I don't need to follow up. I don't need to do anything else. I've done everything. I am everything. They love me. Why wouldn't they work with me? They'll work. People don't care about anything. They will not work with you because they'll forget about you. So wouldn't it be lovely to make sure that our marketing does the heavy lift in the meantime, make sure we're front of mind, but also, to be honest, now, if I have a prospect in that situation, I may have an official call in the diary with them in 3 months, but I'm probably calling them every month, just on spec. Nothing closey or stressful, just checking in how things. Did you see that interesting article on the BBC? I'm not calling about future plans. We're speaking in 2 months when you're ready. If they want to bring it forward, that's great, no problem. But I think one of the biggest problems we'll have is we fire and forget. We automate stuff, we leave stuff to some kind of magical process that means it's going to work, and we leave out the most important ingredient. We do all this work to create these conversations, and then we leave out the most important ingredient, and that is us, fundamentally us. And short of going around there and saying surprise, the only thing I've really got at my disposal is my voice. I could send them a video of me, but I don't want to be that cruel. But my voice at least will remind them of me and remind them of my dulcet tones. So even if you're not using the phone to win business, which I probably would bet 90% of my business takes place on the phone in the end. It's very rare that I've not had a call with someone that's made the difference, even on clients that are at the lower end of the academy, you know, in terms of cost, you know, something that costs 50 quid a month. It's still £600 a year, and that £600 a year is really important to them.
There's some study actually, Al, that says that if you've got a customer that you've moved from email through to a LinkedIn sort of messaging,
Yeah, multi-channel,
through to actually their mobile, if you're on their WhatsApp,
yeah,
nobody wants to give their WhatsApp, you know, that nobody wants to do anything on WhatsApp. WhatsApp is quite a guarded place. So if you're on WhatsApp, you're actually in hallowed ground.
yeah. Yeah, if you've got their mobile.
Yeah. So,
agree.
and a lot of people forget. They may say, well, that's great, we've got a call booked in and we'll follow up. But they forget to say 3 words: in the meantime.
Yeah.
And it's that you can do to say, I'll keep my eye out for you. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Are you on Facebook? Let me look out for your posts. LinkedIn has made it really easy to ring their bell, which makes it sound like a Stephen Mulhern game show. But it makes it so easy for you not to miss and to add to that conversation that they're having in that place.
Yeah.
So you're not
Because
forgotten.
you can't be there 24/7.
No.
So, you know, and I know there are various campaigns, and I've spoken with some of you around them, and some of you do these campaigns, some of you don't, but I won't reveal who. But, you know, going across media and using the channels to get closer to people, ending up in mobile. Once you get someone's mobile, I think you're pretty much, I would call that a relationship. I don't think I give my mobile number to people I don't want to have ongoing communication with. Because if I give you my mobile, you're just going to hassle me. Well, you know, I wouldn't give it to the number of awful salespeople I've had the displeasure of meeting in my life, because I don't want to ever speak to them again. Mobile, and I've had the same mobile number since probably 1998, maybe even earlier. I don't, you know, so my mobile number is really important to me. More people remember their mobile number than remember their national security number. You know, here remembers their passport number. You know, but our mobile numbers are front and center of relevance to our lives. And I think, you know, using the channels and using conversations to test and let people give you buying signals, let them opt in, let them opt out, qualify them. But there is nothing more powerful than voice. Voice betrays everything. Eyes can deceive, the mind can deceive, but the voice, I'm telling you, after 25 years, when I tell somebody how much something's going to cost, I go very still. If you could watch me, I go very still, I go very quiet, I silence myself, because I want to hear the next sound after the price. Because I was always taught that the next sound will tell you where you're at. The sound might be, or the sound might be, but whatever sound it is, now I can't get that from an email. I can't get that. There's no other media that I can get that from. So sometimes there is no substitute. And the good news is no one's doing it. People do not pick up the phone. So there is no substitute for doing what none of your competitors will do. And that is pick up the phone and know what you're going to say, so you don't get caught short, so it's not awkward, and be honest. You know, there's no point. Hi, I'm not calling to sell you something. This is the worst line ever, because you're obviously calling to sell me something, and now you've told me you're a liar.
The best one is, hello, yes, this is a sales call. Really?
Why would you say that? But it depends on the audience, right? If you know you're dealing with a sharp shooting, straight shooting, down the line kind of human who doesn't pull any punches and wants it, you know, just tell me, give it to me straight. Well, you know what? This is
all
I want 20
are
seconds.
psychometrically tested before dialing.
Really? Wow.
No.
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 Right.
No.
Oh, you were joking. That's
Yes.
twice you
I mean,
pulled the wool over my
Feel like
eyes
we
today.
can get you today, Al.
Yeah, you got
I'm going to
something.
get me
We'll get
covered.
you.
Yeah.
We have to get you.
My shields are down.
Well,
Look,
I would say that
go
if
on.
anybody's going to use the phone, practice with who you know first.
Yes. Yeah.
Start with your customers. Get back in touch with them, because honestly, the amount of people that I speak to that don't keep in regular contact with their customers until they hear from a customer and they need something.
Oh yeah.
So there's no proactivity in looking after them. Those that got away, see if you can entice them back, because I bet they're not getting calls from who they went with to look after them.
Probably
so you're
not.
showing them the level of service that they're going to get. And by the time you've got round all of those, you've had enough practice. You won't mind ringing anybody on a piece of paper and a business card that you've picked up somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Practice. I can't believe we're at time. We are at time. I know it goes quick. So I'm going to ask you, I'll give you all 5 to 10 seconds to think of your key takeaway from today. Just before I do that, let me tell everyone, first of all, thank you for being here at the Tech for You Ladies Marketing Hour. Next month, on May the 10th, I believe, we're going to be speaking about, he says, scrambling for his notes, we're going to be speaking about the power of reputation, how referral marketing and networking should be a core part of your marketing plan. And I'm delighted to say we're going to have the fantastic Charlie Lawson joining us as our guest speaker. Absolutely. Until very recently, Charlie was arguably one of the most networking people in the world, most experienced networking people in the world, running the biggest networking organization in the UK, and had grown up around networking. So what he doesn't know about reputation and word of mouth is probably not worth worrying about. So join us for that. But before we go today, key takeaway. We'll start with who wants to go first, so as to not. Adam looks like he's ready.
All of us were ready. I think
Right.
for me, it's about it's about starting a conversation, and it's about qualifying in or qualifying out your potential customer, rather than focusing on, I need to make a sale or close something here.
I love that. I love that. Spot on. You've probably stolen everyone.
I was hoping, I was like,
yeah,
I need to get this in.
Rachel, I think you should go next.
Mine is to next time I go to send, I spend a little bit of time every day doing email follow-ups. Next time I am doing my email follow-ups, to consider telephone follow-ups and start getting myself into the habit of calling people. Maybe not calling people cold from the start, like you say, but practicing calling people and having that conversation, and it does wonders for any relationship as well, any business relationship. Just picking up the phone, you can't convey tone. You can convey tone in writing, that's a huge part of what I do, but you can't convey tone as accurately over email as you can over the phone, and that's what I'm going to start doing.
Love that. And you can also, just to intervene, I use WhatsApp voice notes. I leave voice notes for people a lot of the time if I can't make calls. Simon, what's your key takeaway?
I think, well, firstly, Wendy, it's been fantastic. So there's been loads learned today. I think the two things for me are, what's the worst they're going to say? What is the worst that they're going to say? Well, that's no, isn't it? So if we can get over that, then that's going to change our lives pretty much. And I think the other one is having a few options available to yourself so you can lead with benefit for them. Switch the conversation around quickly to how can I help you? And I think that's going to give you a better in. That was it 7 minutes? No, 7 seconds.
7 seconds.
7 seconds, 7 minutes. That'll be a long conversation.
The 7 seconds is
a good
powerful.
conversation.
Yeah.
Wendy, last but not least, what's your key takeaway from today?
Gosh, well, I'm just going to reiterate one of my strap lines really and say, you never know where a conversation will lead.
I love that. And if people want to find out more, big plug moment, where should they go?
Easy, all the W's, makingconversationscount.com.
Doesn't get any easier than that. For me, the key takeaway would be all the tools available to marketers are good tools. There are no bad tools. Some of them can be used badly. And I want you to think about the tool you have the most fear of using. It's probably the telephone. And I want you to look at the telephone, and I want you to love it. And I want you to imagine yourself using it for the good of your clients. So if the telephone was a good thing for your clients, and if them hearing from you was a good thing, how would they feel? How would you feel? And start falling in love with your phones again, because I think the time has come for us to get over the hurdles of those horrific decades, the 80s and 90s, where it was all just all stereotypical and awful. We live in a very different world where we've all evolved, the channels have all evolved, and hopefully your marketing will have evolved a little bit today as well.
And I'd love to hear their stories.
Yes, indeed. Well, if you've got a nightmare or a positive, if you've got a nightmare from the 80s, or if you use telemarketing in a clever way today, tell us, because share. Why not? We've been sharing with you. You can share back. So tell us those stories. We'd love to hear about them. Thank you to the panel once again. Thank you for being here. Thank you to you for listening. And we will see you all in a month. Au revoir.
Bye.
Bye.